Hello, Kelly.
Hi, it's so nice to meet you.
Nice to finally meet you.
We're so excited for today. So
That's awesome. Exactly. It's great.
all the chocolate looks delicious. The box smelled so good when I opened it. So
Great. That's great. And everything, the box came great. Like
perfect. Yep. Perfect. And yeah, fingers crossed India chocolate comes in the next couple days. But like I said, one of them is actually in the hospital. She's pretty unwell. So she's excited that it's being recorded. So
yeah, it's being recorded right now. So it'll feel better. Yeah. Yep. And then there's one that in the US that didn't make it.
Yeah, he's also gonna watch. Hi, Andrew. He's gonna watch this as well when his chocolate comes.
Great. Yeah. Awesome. All right. I'm just getting stuff ready on my side.
Perfect.
Presentation with some great media content.
Awesome. And then I know we're gonna have, barring those two not coming, around 10 people. So I'll watch the names and make sure everyone's here.
Yep. Yeah, and I will be admitting them. I think that
perfect.
I would be doing that myself. So far nobody's here. So as they come in, I'll let them in.
Sounds great. Thank you.
And so what exactly is your role?
So I am the manager level on this project. Sheila, Pat, and Teresa are like the senior managers. So Andrew's my peer and Christopher's my peer. And then underneath them are like the analysts. So kind of a lot of people on the team. But
awesome. So Kartik is joining.
oh, awesome.
And he left.
He'll be back.
It's all good.
And then Anne, I don't know if she'll be able to join. Hi, Teresa. Oh, her audio is connecting.
Yeah.
Morning, Teresa.
Hey, good morning, Kelly. How are you?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing all right.
Whoa.
Hi.
Hi. How are you? Hey there.
Morning, Sheila. Sheila, you're on mute.
I feel like we need Christmas music or something.
I almost just turned mine on, actually.
You should.
I was literally for like about 30 seconds thinking maybe I should like dub some music, maybe something like chocolate related. And then I
like something from the Willy Wonka movie or what?
Yeah.
No, I was thinking.
Okay, I can start. I can do it. Oompa loompa.
This is
it's my favorite song from there.
This one is like
perfect time to tell you this is recorded, Grace, so I can keep playing.
Oh no, yeah, that's right.
So this one is one that I with some of my friends in Seattle. Um, and that's it.
I like it.
It was on one of my TikToks. All right.
So
What is
I have one burning question that has been pretty much a source of difficulty in my family for years, and I'd love to get your expert opinion on it.
Sure.
Is white chocolate chocolate?
Yeah. Yeah. It's the fat of the chocolate. So we only used cocoa butter and sugar and milk powder. That's
Okay.
it. But it's still coming from cacao, which
Is okay.
all the education that you guys are going to be getting right now.
Well, I don't mind telling you, I have been on the other side of that argument, saying, hey, if it's not brown, it can't possibly be chocolate.
You could have people debate it. I'm sure there's people in the industry that will debate it, but essentially it comes from chocolate, from the cacao, which we'll get into. Yeah.
I stand corrected. Thank you.
Welcome. So we are at 8 minus myself. So we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that
All right, we have one in the hospital,
yeah.
and we have another one who did not get his chocolate kit in the mail because he's in the
But he should
Deloitte
be
area.
joining.
But I think
Yeah.
he may join here in a second.
Taking them to see if
And
they
I apologize, I can only stay on for the first 30 minutes, so, but I can't miss the good chocolate testing.
Well, and we are recording it, so maybe sometime when you have a little longer, you'll be able to come back, play the recording, and finish up.
Yeah.
And
get
hear
some-
me singing.
Yes, the Oompa Loompa song. Good
Good.
stuff.
All right. So I think we're at 10 now with myself.
Here we go. Here are a couple more folks joining.
All right.
All right. Hi, Pat. Hi, Cardi K. Glad you're here. America, did you get your chocolate kit in the mail?
I did. I'm so excited. I had no idea what to expect, and I just opened it like right before our call. Super
deal.
cool. Thank you for including me, you guys.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, Kelly was our kind host to find Glenn and get all of this arranged. And then Pat and I came up with the funding from our respective PRD budgets. And so here we are. So Glenn, I guess that's the only upfront intro information that I had in mind. So we'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. All right. So I think we're a crowd of 9. So I don't mind the using the chat feature. If you want to share, we all be on mute, and you want to share like any questions, you could throw it in the chat. If you have any burning thing you want to share, you could throw it in the chat. It's very informal as far as questions and comments and just things that don't make sense. And also, if you want, I guess at certain points in time, if you want to actually ask your question, I think that's totally fine. We're a small enough crowd to do that. But as far as everything is concerned, we'll stay on mute until we get through to the tasting portion, which would probably be in like about an hour's time. So we'll go through a presentation, and I will present that now. All right, so everybody sees my virtual chocolate tasting screen presentation. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I'm just going to make you guys bigger on my screen so I could see you all. And then I'll do my intro. Awesome. All right. And I'll have my chat feature. So I want to thank all of you for joining, for Kelly for helping me put this together every step of the way. It's been a smooth process, I have to say. I'm really thankful to everybody. And I want to just, go on. We have a packed agenda today, so we'll get a little bit related. I'll let you know who I am and a little bit about Chocotastery, and then we'll dive into the chocolate basics. Where it comes from, how it's made, and that's where we go into the chocolate making process. And we'll talk through that, and then we'll talk briefly about packaging of chocolate bars, why it's important. And then we'll go into the tasting portion, which is the second half. And we'll dive into learning about our tasting guides, which you all should have received, and our tasting sheet. And so after that, we will take a poll at the end, and then I will get Kelly an email that she'll send out to everybody for a feedback survey, so we can get some feedback. And it's always the best way to get constant feedback from people who join, so that we can continually improve our process. And with that being said, I think it's time to introduce myself. So I have been in the chocolate industry, give or take 10 years. I started out making bonbons in my home in the Bronx. Thanks to Food Network, it was just something that I randomly chose to take up. Didn't think anything of it until I moved to my own place in Hoboken, and then started making my own confections. And then that turned into making my own chocolate in 2015. From there, I had my own mini chocolate factory in my apartment, and wound up a year or so later being asked to be the head chocolate maker at Indie Chocolate in Seattle, Washington. So I made chocolate for that company in Pike Place Market's brand new expansion. I was there for about 8 months, and then came back. And I went back to corporate America, where I had a job in HRIS, and then decided I need to keep my chocolate passion and love for it alive. And with that, I asked myself two important questions. One was, what do I like to do? What have I not done yet? And then looked at it and said, I like tasting chocolate the most. Who doesn't? And then the questions of, where do bakers bake chocolate? I mean, where do bakers bake their cookies and cakes and their chocolate cookies and all that? And I said to myself, a bakery. And then I said, I wanted this venture to be something with a play on words that played to what it's all about. And so I said, where do people taste chocolate? And then Chocotastery came to be. And we now host and lead virtual chocolate tastings via Zoom. They're your education and your tasting experience. And so with that, I literally pursue sharing my passion and love for chocolate. And with that being said, I think it's time to just jump right in. All right, so we're going to talk about the basics. So in the chat, I'd love for somebody or anybody or everybody to just chime in with some of these answers that some of the answers I'll post to some of these questions. So where does chocolate come from? If anybody wants to. Okay, great. South America. That's one place. That's great. All right, so Patricia says cocoa beans. Yes. Cocoa plant. Yes. So when we say cocoa, it's COCOA, not to be, I guess, confused with the coca plant, which is the cocaine plant. We don't get our chocolate. So yes.
Okay, tip for the day, always be careful.
Yeah.
If you're getting back to your origins and want to ever get into chocolate making, you have now gotten your most important tip of the day from Glenn.
Exactly. Yep. So So it comes from the cocoa tree, and we will see in a few moments cocoa, cacao trees. I'm going to use cocoa and cacao interchangeably. They are the same term. So you'll see a bunch of different cacao plants and trees from all over the world. So when we think about chocolate, when we purchase it, what are the typical ingredients that we see on a chocolate bar or in the chocolate? Anybody have any guesses? All right, so we have milk and sugar and milk. Okay, so for milk chocolate, we use milk powder. So there's no actual liquid that goes into chocolate. If a liquid like milk would go into chocolate, it would seize it up, just like water. Water and chocolate don't mix. So if you ever get water in chocolate that you're melting down or anything, it'll just harden up into a big ball, and you won't be able to use it. But the main ingredients are the cacao itself, the cocoa beans that are refined down, and then sugar and cocoa butter. Cocoa butter is the fat of the cocoa bean. And so there's varying amounts of fat in cocoa beans by region, by variety. So those are the main ingredients. Sometimes there are soy lecithin, which is an emulsifier that helps with when chocolatiers, they want to make their confections. So they add in a little bit of this emulsifier to make it thinner so that you can get a really nice shell on any confections. And it's just easier to work with in general. So here's a great question for you guys. What do you think gives cacao its flavor? Any guesses? The tough one. Working with the mixture. I mean, yes. In the most general sense, Grace, yes. Okay, God, okay. Maybe he has some power over, the atmosphere and the terroir and the farmers who harvest and the chocolate makers who make the chocolate. Yes, Christopher, the soil is one major component. So we're talking about this is very similar to wine, where you have the wine industry, they talk about terroir, and then they get into very specifics on like what mountain the grapes came from in whatever region of whatever country, etc. With chocolate, we're a couple of decades behind that. We know exactly like the farms that actually produce the cacao, but we don't know exactly like the square footage coordinates of where each bean comes from. We're not there yet. Uh, we're not there where somebody in the chocolate industry could say, okay, this bean is from this specific square footage in this farm because it's on this hill because of this climate. We're not that advanced in that sense. So when we talk about the flavors, we talk about it's the soil, it's the genetics, it's the variety. We're all different. We all have our own background. We are made up of various different geographies. Same case with cacao, that there's various different varieties. And so this leads me to the last part of the last question is a real lovey-dovey one. What is craft chocolate? So what do you think craft chocolate is? Great. So Kartik was saying single source chocolate. Yeah, so that's yes, made by yourself. chocolate with cool packaging. I totally think that too. Special, it is. It's near and dear to most people's heart. Must wear flannel or okay. Um, so the so it is a culmination of everything. Um, so when you have like people along the process paying close attention to each step. So it's small batch, like you guys said. It's when the chocolate maker is paying attention to all the variables to bring out the best personality, best flavor of that chocolate. So it is something that that is hold very close and dear and special to people. So you guys are all correct. All right. So this is a little map where I don't know exactly when this was created, but it shows the entire world. And this line here is the equator. And all cacao is grown within the along the equator, 20 degrees above and below it. So you can see the Tropic of Cancer and the Tropic of Capricorn. And that during that cacao belt, you could see there's various different countries where cacao is grown. And so just to point out, the red is where bulk cacao normally comes from. It's Western Africa. So this is your Ivory Coast, Ghana, Cameroon. So there, Ivory Coast is by far the largest producer of cacao in the world. And then you go over to the left a little bit and you see where Mexico is and Brazil. They're fine flavored and bulk beans. They're a mixture there. And all that green is where there's fine flavor. And so you can see throughout the, going west throughout the Asian area, it's a mix there. There's bulk beans and basic beans, and there are this isn't the most up to date because there are more and more fine chocolate, fine cacao being grown in various areas all across this entire cacao belt. All right, so that brings us to the chocolate making process. So this is the fun part where you see that this is the machine. This is a refiner. And when I worked at Indie Chocolate, I used to make upwards of 100-pound batches of chocolate in this machine. So we have to start at the beginning. This is where cacao grows. As you can see, these are a couple of pictures that I pulled from Instagram where I thought were just beautiful depictions of cacao growing in its very nascent form, and then growing to the massive football-sized pods. So on the left, there's cacao from Vietnam, and as you see that there's like little mini flowers, right? So those buds that are budding, so those branches are pretty thick, and the trees, they take several years to grow and to mature to like 2 to 3 meters high, and it could take upwards of a couple of years just to mature and then start to even grow the cacao pods. And then these little flowers that are budding here, they'll get pollinated by midges. And then that's where the small mini pod, as you can see, that's kind of like a small size. It's not like super baby size. But if you look on the right side, right picture, Costa Rica, these, so you can see that they're all varying sizes, all in the same branch. So you see that mini one in the center and then the football size one right above it. Yeah, it's pretty cool, America. When you see it in person, it's a whole another ball game. So these trees here are, so the left side is from Ashavite in Guatemala. So you can see that's pretty tall tree there with pods just growing all over the branches. And on the left side, or the right side, sorry, there's cacao trees from Ucayali, Peru. So we'll be tasting some chocolate from that region today, which is exciting. But you can also see the really cool thing is that they're all different colors. The pods are orange, red, they're yellow, they're purple, They're red. They're a mixture of red and orange. So you could also see some hints of green. So some pods they start out as green and then they change colors based on their varieties. And then the bottom one is just, I believe, just red pods. It's a little dark, but you just see the expanse of it. That's an optical illusion, Patricia. They're not as big as pumpkins. They're big as like football size. And this is the size of it on the table. I took this in Dallas at a festival, and we wound up being able to cut it open, and you can see this right here is the placenta. It is what holds the cacao seeds in place. And you may think, why are you calling it a cacao seed? Because it is. It is a seed because it grows in the pod. And so all of these here, they're all the seeds. There's about 30 or so, depending on the size of the pod. And there's this white film, this like pulp around it. So that's called mucilage. And it's just a term that we use to categorize it. It's perfectly edible. And I also have a nice prop here. So I have my own cacao pod. It is not the real thing. It is a wooden pod, but it goes to show, you know, the intricacies of this is technically the seeds that are scooped out by the farmer that's harvesting the cacao. And you can see that there's the rind inside. There's a part of the branch that is still on there, and that's important. So that leads me to the next part where it's harvesting. And so this is a farmer in Peru. Maybe he's the one who chopped open pods for the bars that we're going to be tasting today from Peru. So he is using that really sharp machete that's just, underneath his elbow, underneath his arm. I don't even know my anatomy this morning. So yeah, that's a pretty sharp machete that they are skilled after thousands of hours of opening up pods. They are able to do it in such a fantastic way that I just have to show you guys. So I have a video. So I'll have a couple of video clips. If the volume is too loud, just let me know in the comments, but I think it should be good. So you get better than my up close and personal. You get a really up close and personal to see that there's not a lot of mucilage on this here, but you can still see how it's tied together by the placenta. And to answer your question, Patricia, they don't. Some places may, but they do it all by hand. It's a labor of love. Yeah, Grace, that's correct. It looks like an avocado, but we don't eat the inside rind part. That's the only part that really doesn't get used in a practical commercial sense. We have it that when the farmers they scoop out the seeds, they throw the pod itself on the ground, and sometimes they use it as like a fertilizer mulch. They'll just leave it there and it'll just kind of just settle into the ground and decompose. And that's fine. Or they may just have other applications for it. Sometimes they may preserve it if they want, but here is another way, a fun way that you could also open up a cacao pod. So in this video, some of these videos are from my friends at Goodnow Farms. They're in Massachusetts. They've gone on several origin trips, and so I've asked them for some content, some media to share with everybody. So they were more than happy to do this. And in this video, they are visiting the Esmeraldas, Ecuador farm. And so you'll see one person is like the tour guide. He's kind of the expert in fermentation and drying, which we'll get to in a moment. But they're going around, walking around the farm, and one of the men you'll see at the end of the video, he's one of the farmers. He's one of the family members who owns the farm.
So what are we doing, Dan? Harvesting one of the few pods that we have hanging around here. Yeah. This time of year, the seeds are a little bit smaller, kind of very end of the harvest season. A little less pulp in general.
Not as juicy as earlier.
Well,
So as you can see, yes, it breaks open quite easy. I've never tried that. I've never been to an origin trip yet. However, you could see if you hit it a certain way, you can definitely just make a crack in it and open it up. It's not hard inside; it's quite soft. So when that's the main question of the day. Both two people have asked it. So you could totally taste those seeds right from the pod, just like we see it. It tastes kind of like lemonade meets lychee. It's like a very sweet. It tastes nothing like what we think chocolate is. That cocoa taste. It's nothing like that. We're nowhere near that stage yet. So that's the answer to that burning question for you folks. Awesome. So once the farmer scoops out all of the seeds, they could be bagged up and sent to a central fermentary, or they could be sold to other organizations or known as a co-op. And so once a co-op gets those beans, they purchase them at a wet bean rate, and then they put them through the fermentation process. And with this process, it takes about 6 to 7 days. It's a very complex process, but what you want to do is bring up the heat. You want to put all the beans into a box. In this case, there's these massive wooden boxes. All right. Thanks for joining. All right. Cool. So all these beans are put into a box. They're covered with banana leaves and jute bag. And so that allows for heat and the temperature to rise. And so when that happens, there's bacteria and there's a reaction that happens with yeast. And so there's acetic acid, lactic acid, and ethanol that are formed. And so as temperatures go up, this is the fermentation process. And so the flavor development occurs here. And this is one of the most important steps in the process of flavor development. And this happens where every day, depending on the origin, depending on the farm, depending on the fermentary, lots of variables we're talking about here, but they basically take the contents of one box and move it to the next box the next day. And so it constantly gets turned on a daily basis, or otherwise they won't have a proper fermentation to it. So here is, this is in El Carmen, Nicaragua. They brought in bags of wet cacao, and then now they're going to fill up these boxes. And so you saw that was a pretty big bag that he poured in there, and there's still lots of room there. So these could hold upwards of hundreds of pounds of cocoa beans in there. So this is a video from Peru, Ucayali region, from Letterpress Chocolate. And so this is just seeing there's a line of 7 boxes. And so there's something else going on. There's something going on at each box, essentially. This one woman here at the beginning, she's putting banana leaves on a box to enclose it to ensure that no outside atmospheric things get into the beans. Then it would go on from there. And they're actually smoothing it out in this one. And then you'll see that they're moving beans from one box to another later on in the. So these beans haven't even been moved yet, but these beans are going to the one over there that he's working with, and then they'll get into this one after that. And this is the jute bag that they use to cover the other boxes. So you can see it's a long process. It takes a lot. And basically, Patricia, I'll get to that point, to your statement there about Hershey's and the cost. Yeah, Grace, they're pretty healthy for you. So this is a quick time lapse of the amount of banana leaves that go onto a box, a specific box during this process. And you say, why banana leaves? And basically means that there's some enzymes in the banana leaves that help with the fermentation process. And so that anything that helps is great. And so this is in Peru as well, just so you know. Chris, yes. Yep, exactly. You never thought you had to ferment the seeds. You just thought that you just need to dry them. Yeah, and that's where there needs to be some development of flavor, or else you'll just have beans that just are overly acidic and super sweet. And yeah, they won't taste that good at all. So the next part is great segue, actually, is the drying portion. So once we have that up to 7 day process, depending on your location and their own protocols, then you have to go into the drying process where beans are laid out on drying beds. These are small drying beds. They're just like wooden boxes where you have like a mesh on the bottom, sort of like chicken wire. And so this is in Nicaragua. And so this is very hands-on. So they here are using their hands to move the beans around because you don't want them to clump up. You don't want to dry them together. You want it to ensure that any liquid that's still on there is dried off. We want to get the moisture content level to about 7 to 8% in order for it to be bagged up and shipped. So this is from Esmeraldas in Ecuador. They have a bigger facility, so they're able to have massive size drying beds, which they roll out. And this is a structure where there's multiple layers, and as you can see, there's the pillars, the stone pillars. So they're up high, they're raised up high, but yet they come out all the way. And so if there was any bad weather, rain, storms, or anything like that, they could push all those into an enclosed part of that facility where then they could still dry, but then they won't be exposed to the water, which would then counteract the whole entire process and ruin the beans.
Get these data loggers out of here.
So I think there's like another one or two more of these down further, which is pretty crazy in the amount and size of this production. So this is the, this is, I believe, the same, Ukiah region. They use these, I call them cacao rakes because they look exactly like rakes, but they're just wooden. And so they just move it back and forth to dry it. And you can see that there's the green mesh that they have that kind of supports them. Okay, so you could see right in the center, you could see that there's like a piece of something in there, right? Like a, I guess like a piece of twine or jute bag or something like that. That's why we have to sort beans, because things get in there in the bags that when they ship out to the chocolate makers around the world or cacao importers. So that's we don't want any foreign objects in the chocolate, in the beans, in the bags. I've seen rocks and twine and all of these other pieces of plastic and stuff like that. I've heard that there were like toy frogs and bullets in like a bullet casing in a bag once from another maker. So there's a lot that we have to check because as you see, there's machinery that's being used. And if a rock goes in there, it could seriously damage some of that equipment. And so Patricia, you say, how do they keep the bugs away? It's a great question. It depends on their location. Sometimes it's wide open and they just have proper sanitary protocols. Sometimes things are enclosed, so there is no insects. But yeah, I'm not 100% sure on the protocols for that. Yeah. And so this is an example bag of beans. They're around 60 or so kilos. So that's around 120 to 132 pounds. They vary in size. So this is the jute bag, and that's from La Colonia in Nicaragua that we've worked with. And so these beans are at like 8% moisture content level. And then from there, we have like your chocolate makers, they purchase the beans from a middle company. That could be the best case scenario for like a small, really small maker, but bigger makers, they buy direct where they buy straight from the co-op or straight from the farm. And then once they get the beans, they have to sort the beans. Like I said, there's foreign objects in there that they need to take out. There's clumped beans. We don't want those. Broken beans. We don't want those because they're not properly fermented. And so it's a labor of love. So this is a video, this video is from Letterpress. And so they hand sort their beans, and predominantly, I'd say 75, 80% of makers sort beans by hand. A lot of makers, that other portion, they use machines. There's optical sorters that are able to learn the beans and take out any foreign objects. So that's the when you're working with multiple tons per year, you're not going to sit there and you're not going to do this. If you're working with a few tons a year, yeah, this could totally be what you do. And that leads us to roasting. So there's various types of ways to roast. This is a convection oven. So they're just trays, as you saw in the prior video, there are just trays of beans with perforated holes on the bottom, so the airflow works well. Everybody in the mix gets their heat and they're paid attention to during the process. And this is where the Maillard reaction happens for the beans. They turn browner. All of the off flavors, that vinegary, alcohol, ethanol type of aroma will then be burnt off. And so when you roast beans, people say, "Oh, they smell like brownies." Sure, they do. When you get to anything more than that, you're burning off the valuable flavor profile. The chemical compounds in there are quite precious. So we don't want to over roast beans. We want to roast them just right so that you get that full flavored profile. It's like reaching its own potential, in a sense of the word, saying that. So this is a drum roaster. So here you'll see it's a massive one. I think this is about 30 or so pound drum. I think it's a little bit more, but it's around 30. This is what Goodnow Farms uses to roast their beans. And as you see, it will turn, and all the beans are constantly getting that heat exposure. And with that, here's a little clip. And the nice thing about it is if you're in your home and you're just starting out making chocolate, they are 2-kilo sized drum roasters that are used for coffee and have just been modified to be used for cacao. So everything is the same. You just could, I think it's like 2 pounds that you could roast in that smaller one. And once we roast the beans, we cool them down, and then we have to break them open, right? We have to make sure that there's an outer husk layer, and then there's the inner nib. And so when we go through that process, we're not going to sit there and hand break thousands and thousands of beans. That's not profitable, and that doesn't make sense. So we utilize machines that we call winnowers. And this is an example winnower that Chocolate Alchemy sells. They make these and they sell them. So it's just this one person, John Nancy. He's kind of the forefather of sharing knowledge on making chocolate at home and the entire process in general. And so this is where like you have a hopper feed right here. And what would be here would be a juicer, like a champion juicer, where it can crack your beans. And there's a series of pipes, and you'll see that there's one going down and one going into this bin. And there's an opening right here at the end of that bin where there's a external hose where it's connected to a dry vacuum. And with that, you get the airflow through there, and then the nibs way more than the husk. And so the nibs would fall through this pipe here into a bucket, and then the husk gets sucked into the bin because of that airflow. And then you're able to modify it using other pipes, and essentially you'll have a bucket of nibs and a bucket of husk to be moving on to the next part of the process. And so this is a bigger machine that Good Enough Farms uses. It's about 30 kilos an hour that you could crack and winnow. So what you'll see is they'll come shoot down the hopper, and then they'll go through this mechanism to crack it. And then you'll see that there's husk and nib, and that's going to be vibrated on several different layers. And then there'll be a suction area at the end of each level to suck in all of the husk. And then you'll see the nibs fall into the bucket. So you can see this is a pretty large bucket, and there's a lot of husk still in there. They may go through that again, or I believe there's like a 1% margin of error with regard to husk being in chocolate, but they sieve through. Later on, they'll pour the chocolate that once it's done, they'll put it through a sieve, and then they work with it after that. So Christopher's question, how many pounds does it take to X amount of chocolate for X amount of chocolate, for instance, 2-to-1 ratio? Yeah, no problem. So it depends. I think that the number is around 20 pods make up a bar of chocolate. So you lose a lot from the actual seed because you have the husk around it. And so hold on one second. Sorry about that.
Good question, Christopher. I was wondering that. Thank you.
Sorry about that, random delivery. Great. So yeah, Amazon packages. Yeah, Christmas gifts. Sorry about that. I was saying that there's about 20 pods make up a bar of chocolate. So you're getting around that amount per tree. So it takes a lot of beans to make one bar of chocolate, which is around 2 ounces of chocolate. And that's also, you have a formula of the sugar and the cocoa butter, if you add in additional cocoa butter, and then the chocolate itself. So that goes on. So once we have all of the nibs, we then have to refine it down. So you'll see on the left side, it's a tabletop refiner. So it's about 8 pounds of chocolate could be made in that. And on the right, that's the machine that you could, on average, do 60 plus pounds. I've made up to 100-pound batches in that machine on the right. It's a monster and it's wonderful. And so this is like the Zen moment of the tasting, of this entire experience. So if you close your eyes and just listen to this, you're able to hear the crackling of the nibs as they are broken down. I could listen to that on repeat all day long. It's just a great sound clip. And with that, you have your formula of putting in sugar. If you want, yes, it's white noise. So you have your formula, right? If you're 70% chocolate bars, you have 30% sugar. So that 30% of sugar is put in at specific times based on the chocolate maker's recipe, and up to them when they do it in the process, whether it's a couple of hours in or a day in, it all depends, right? And so there, once you refine it down to a micron level, about 20 microns, that's when it will give you a nice, clean, smooth feel in your mouth. If there's anything, and this is in general food facts, any micron level above 30, we will taste it. It will be very abrasive on our palate. So if there's anything, any chocolate that is over 30 microns, then you will be able to feel it after a while. If you hold it to the roof of your tongue, and between the roof of your tongue and where your teeth start, that area there, you'll be able to feel like that's a sensitive area. You'll be able to feel any bigger particle sizes. But with that, the next step is tempering. And so you need to constantly move the chocolate. You need to bring the temperature, you have to melt all the chocolate down, right? So you have to bring the temperature up to a specific amount and bring it all the way down and then reincorporate it. So we're breaking down all the cocoa butter fat crystals in there and then reforming them to have a really strong bond so that we get, when the chocolate is cooled, you get a nice shine and a nice snap to it. So this is when I used to make my own chocolate in my apartment back in the day. And this is a marble slab. So this is a method called hand tempering. So you just constantly move the chocolate around and you just need time, temperature, and agitation for it.
You can't temper chocolate in 5 minutes. You need time, you need temperature, and you need agitation. You need to keep working it, keep moving it.
And you may ask why a marble slab, and it's because that material, that stone is quite cold, so it helps bring down the temperature. And at this point you'll get this to a specific temperature range, and then this is about 2/3 of the chocolate in your bowl, and then you would put it back in the bowl with that other 1/3 that hasn't been touched yet, so it's at a higher temperature. And when you put it together, you mix it, and then you're agitating it further, and it will then be in that specific temperature range, right where you need to be able to work with it. And when you work with it, you're able to mold it up, and then it will cool down, and it'll just pop right out. So if you do it by hand, you're basically going to take a longer period of time to do it. So bigger makers, they use continuous tempering machines. So Goodnow Farms chocolate, they use a machine that does all of the tempering, all the melting, all the moves in temperature, all of that is done inside the machine. And then there's a big vat of chocolate here, which you'll see, and it's constantly flowing. And so this machine could hold probably at least 100 pounds of chocolate in that bottom basin. And then this part here is the fun part where the bars are molded up. And you'll hear and see that there's two side areas where they're called vibrating trays. So they'll vibrate and they're really loud, but it gets all the air bubbles out of the chocolate bars. And so you'll see there may be some bubbles that come to the surface, and then it basically uniformly smooths out the chocolate with that vibration as well. And then from there, you have to mold up bars. So there's an optional way that some makers are using, and this is just easily using a syringe. So there's a tabletop tempering machine. You pull in the amount of chocolate that you want, and then you just measure it out. And there's a scale, and basically every single bar will have the exact amount, and there's no mess, no cleanup. It's basically this will vibrate on a vibrating table and then cooled, and then it'll just pop right out, and no cleanup at all. Right, so Gondal Farms, they use massive freezers. Well, not freezers, but like holding. They're cooling machines. So this is pretty big, and it has a lot of racks to hold multiple trays. And so once all the chocolate is in temper and it cools, it's automatically just released from the polycarbonate molds. And so it makes life easier when you just tap it and the chocolate bars just fall right out. And then from there, you have to wrap the chocolate bars. And so that is in and of itself a very intensive process for the chocolate maker that's starting out. So this is a video of Goodnow Farms when they used to wrap every chocolate bar by hand. And you could just take it all in. It takes a while.
I use that line as a joke because when I was, right after Emerson, I worked at a local production company here in Malta. And we would do different assignments for national shows, like Entertainment Tonight. So we went out and we shot behind the scenes at school ties, which was shot at some school up in like, well, it was shot here. So somewhere around here. So I went to the set, and the AD.
Patricia, totally, I agree. She says, I can never have the patience to do that so nicely. Yeah, I'm always amazed at the working with the foil. Origami for chocolate. Yeah, pretty much. Nowadays, though, everybody's getting into a very eco-friendly, like plastic or a resealable bag that goes inside of a box. So that's how the process is done. Once the bars are packaged up in their final homes, then they're sold everywhere. So with that, kind of ends the chocolate making process, right? We as consumers take over, we purchase our chocolate. Does anybody have any other questions around the chocolate making process? And I know that a bunch were asked during it, which was great. Does anybody have any more?
Well, I know you talked about it being like 70%, and I know the bars that we have for tasting have percentages of cocoa in them. If it's just like a regular Hershey's bar, what percentage cocoa is that?
Funny that you may ask. And that kind of goes back to the other question before, which was Patricia's question that, why don't Hershey bars cost more? So essentially, don't quote me on this, but I believe there's around 7% cacao in Hershey's bars. They use bulk beans from Africa, so the Ivory Coast predominantly. And so those beans are not like fine flavored beans. The beans that they're not being paid a pretty good rate for. Let's just say that. And the process by which to make that they don't pay attention. They have massive machines. That's what lowers the cost of that process for them. They also add in additional things that we technically may not know. So they add in like artificial vanilla. They add in, I believe there's vegetable oils or some oils in there outside of the three ingredients of the chocolate liquor, the sugar. They also add in milk powder because they don't have dark chocolate in the technical Hershey bar. It's a more milk chocolate, but they have like the Hershey dark version, which most likely doesn't have milk powder. But I would just still read the ingredients. It's a long list of ingredients for that, but they do it in such a large quantity that you're able to pay less than $1 for it, and I have no other comments on it, other than you get your bang for your buck when you actually pay $8 to $10 for a bar of chocolate, and so that leads me to great segue. And I think Sheila, I think I covered your question, and I think Patricia, I covered your question. So that leads to the point of the chocolate packaging. So most bars on the market are going for $8 to $10 that are craft chocolate makers. So they're not massive companies like Lindt and Ghirardelli. They're smaller, family owned sometimes, or small team of people, less than a dozen sometimes. Sometimes even just a husband and a wife or just one person. So that takes on, fine tuning every step of the process to be productive, but you're also paying for the beans for the work done at origin. So that's really, really, really important when it comes to the ethics of the chocolate. As we'll see here, so what's so important about chocolate bar's packaging? You have stories, you have so much added value to it. You get to learn about the maker and the origin, and you get a sneak peek at what is in that bar and why is it so beautiful, why is it so precious, and why is it so expensive. So I'll just run through these few makers here before we start our chocolate tasting portion. But as you'll see here at the top right, the top left, Dick Taylor Chocolate, they're based in Eureka, California. They have a specific theme on their bar. So you see that there's the percentage right here. It's kind of small, but it's the 75%. They have the name of their company and the name of the origin. And they have this imagery of a boat. And you're saying, why is a boat? Because they're all carpenters. The two guys who founded this company were carpenters. They probably still work with wood. They're also in a folk band, and they are just really great guys. And they built out a team, and they use that imagery along all of their branding. It's kind of like wine labels. Yeah, there's varying types of simplicity or detail to it all. On the back, you see here the origin has you have a map, you know where it's coming from, the ingredients, all that stuff. Then you have like Rocca and Soma Chocolate Maker. These companies, they use various abstract art and design to evoke some type of tasting experience. It's going to be happening during the process of you tasting it. Then there's Potomac Chocolate, and so they were originally from Woodbridge. Now they're in another location in Virginia, but they're by the Potomac River, which is why the fish come into play. And they have that theme going across it, and they have the details of what they do and the flavor notes on the back. Then you also have, if you go to the second level, white label chocolate, they do have this sense of sophistication and simplicity. So they just literally have their name and the origin and the percentage. And if they have an award, they put a sticker on it. There's several different award programs throughout the year the International Chocolate Awards, Academy of Chocolate Awards, and they go through the bars that are submitted go through a rigorous tasting and grading scale, and then every year, chocolate makers are crowned winners, their bars are crowned winners, and they are able to have these stickers on it. That doesn't mean it adds some clout, but it doesn't really change the experience. It's basically the same chocolate, but just some added notoriety for that bar. You'll see the next one, white chocolate. This is with Castronovo. Excuse me, they're based in Florida, and they use white chocolate with lemon oil and lemon sea salt. So if you think white chocolate, yes, it's a chocolate. We talked about this before at the beginning, right? But this bar is by far the best white chocolate inclusion bar you will ever taste in your entire life. I fell in love with this bar, and it basically, it exudes like you're going to get a lemon experience, a burst of lemon, because there's a lemon tree from Italy right on the front. And on the back, they talk about where the lemons come from and their family and how they've made it. And they've won several awards for it. And it's kind of like tasting like a lemon drop candy in a chocolate bar. It's fantastic. Highly recommended. Moving right along, Dandelion, they use designs made by artists local in the San Francisco area in California. They talk about their process and a little bit about the maker who on their team they made that bar and their flavor profile that they wanted to bring out in that production. And then lastly, Maru, they're from Vietnam. You'll see that there's a bold like teal color, and you're like, why that color? It's weird. Like, why not just a normal brown or whatever? So with them, they use the color scheme of the pods, the color of the pods that they get the beans from in whatever region of Vietnam. So the pods that they worked with are this color, this teal color. And if you Google Maru and cacao pods, I'm sure there's a picture out there. I couldn't find my picture of it to put it in here, but it's literally like 5 or 6 pods with the bars underneath it. It's really beautiful. But all in all, these are all depicting a story, the exact location, where the beans are from, and all of the information about how they made it. So everybody's in the know, they understand it. Compared to that Hershey analogy, you don't really know what the hell they're doing. You don't know what's going in there. These natural ingredients, you don't know what it is. Here, all of these makers use 2 or 3 ingredients, and it's very transparent. And if anybody does anybody have any questions around that? No? All right. So this will then move on to the tasting portion. And so I'm going to pose a question to all of you. Why is it so important for us to mindfully taste chocolate?
To appreciate the craftsmanship.
Bingo. Anybody else want to share? No? All right. Well, essentially, Sheila was right. Essentially, like wine to enhance your experience. Yep. We want to pay attention to all the process, and I structured this entire experience so that you get the foundations, right? You get to understand exactly how much goes into making a chocolate bar. And I think somebody had alluded to it before, like, oh my gosh, why? I never knew that this took so long to do. So it's a labor of love, like I mentioned. And if we take the time to understand what goes on during the process, we can connect it and have that experience evoke some type of experience memory for us that we've had in our past.
Mindfully taste chocolate.
So Sheila asks, okay. So great. All right. So Christopher's comment. All right. So favorite packaging of the four. Christopher says Stone Grinds is the most prominent one for him. That's great. And we could at the end, when we take a poll, we'll take a poll on flavor. We could also just talk about which one do you think is the most beautiful, the most attractive. If you were to buy, if you would not know anything about those four bars, which one would you see if there were the only four bars on the shelf? Which one would you actually pick before you even taste them? So we can get to that at the end. But Sheila has a good question here. What cacao percentage constitutes dark versus milk? So dark chocolate tends to be in like the high 60s, mid to high 60s to 100%. And milk could be, you could have a dark milk, which means that you're putting in less milk powder, but it's going to be in the 50s and 60s. It'll be a little bit sweeter. You'll have the milk component to it. The milk also could go down to like, I would say like the 30s or 40s, that low. So that should answer that. All right, so with your packets, you received your tasting guides, and you also received mini ones as well. Just threw those in there because I've used them for other events, and I thought they were really cool. If you're on the go, you could always just have it with you, or you can share it with a friend, or just have it as a backup in a different room. But basically, I made it so that it's a very approachable tool. And it is exactly that. It is a tool. It is a guide. It's not there to be the end all be all. You have to do this. Throughout this entire tasting, whatever you experience is your own experience. There's nothing right about it. There's nothing wrong about it. So at the end of the day, it basically is, do you enjoy this? Would you take another bite? Would you buy another bar? Do you like this region? Do you like this flavor profile? It's all these different things that come out from this entire experience. So the first step that we'll go through, we'll look at the color. We'll take the first bar's color, we'll look at it, we'll use that as a baseline, where it's at on the spectrum, and then we can compare going forward. And it's based on variety and the DNA, right? We're all, like I mentioned, we're all of different backgrounds and ethnicities, and we all have different genetics and DNA. So the same thing with the chocolate, and some chocolate could be the same percentage, but be lighter in color based on the variety. Next, we'll break the piece in half, and you'll hear a soft snap or a super loud snap or a sonic boom snap, and that depicts the tempering. So as we said, like in the tempering process, we break down the cocoa butter fat crystals and we realign them, and that bond, this is what we're testing at that point. Did the maker, hand temper or machine temper the chocolate, and did they do a good job? And that's where we put them to the test. The next part is we will smell the piece of chocolate where we broke it, and that's where the fat is released from the bar into the air, and we're able to bring in that piece to our nose and smell it, and it'll go through our olfactory, and it'll then trigger us to remember what we associate that flavor with, that aroma with. And then once we get to that step, we'll then place the chocolate on our tongues. We'll break it once or twice, allow it to melt, move it around. And then if you want to try it out, you unconsciously open your mouth once or twice to aerate it. And that'll help bring whatever the aromas are that are being brought out by the melting in our mouth, that all those aromas will go up to your head and your brain, and that'll be where the connections are made as well. And then you may think, oh, I don't know the flavors, I can't put my finger on it. Well, we put together some categories of flavors, and some examples. You may not get all of these or any of these. These are just different examples to help trigger you. If you haven't had a specific fruit or specific nut or specific spice, you may not pick it up, and that's totally fine. And we want to ask throughout this process to ourselves, how did we like it? Did we not like it? Did it evoke any memories for us? And then also we have a tasting sheet. You could follow along and write in any specific notes on there, the maker, the origin and percentage, the color, snap, aroma, any flavors you experience, your overall experience, and then you could rate it with a smiley face emoji or a frowny face emoji. All up to you. And so with that, we shall start the tasting. So the first bar, if you have your bars with you, the first bar will be oh, wonderful. Okay, there we go. It'll be the Island Sharks chocolate, the 72%. So they are based in Hilo, Hawaii, on the Big Island, and they are making 72% chocolate with this. So the fun part about this, and this is the fun fact of the day, is Hawaii is the only United States only state in the United States that could grow and produce cacao commercially. And there's no other place in the country that could do that. Sure, there's colleges that have botanical gardens that they could have specific cacao trees. Cacao trees can grow, but they need a tropical atmosphere, and Hawaii is the most tropical of our states. So that's your fun fact of the day. All right, and so as we open, as you can see, they probably take some time and foil wrap their bars as well. All right. So we see here we go. I think it's upside down. Here we go. All right. So what aroma, sorry, what color do you think this is on the spectrum? Is it dark brown, medium dark brown, regular brown? If you want to just share or put it in the comments, either way.
Medium brown?
All right.
Definitely medium brown.
Yeah. Cool. Wow, I'm already getting all of the aromas just by having the bar in my hand. All right, so here we go. We're gonna take a snap. So I'll do it for you guys, and then you can do it for yourselves. Wow. How measure that on the Richter, on the sonic boom scale. How loud was that for you guys?
Pretty loud. I'd give it either a 3 or 4.
Yeah, I mean that was probably the loudest one I've had so far. Wow. All right. So we now want to just take the piece to our nose, and you can take small sniffs and take in what aromas are you getting, and then you could just type it in the chat. So Patricia says fruity aroma. Yeah, I'm getting a deep chocolatey aroma immediately, and there's also like hints of like vanilla. And this bar is basically 100% Hawaiian grown cacao and sugar. So there's no added cocoa butter. And so this is considered a 2-ingredient chocolate bar. And the third ingredient for like a 3-ingredient chocolate bar would just technically be added cocoa butter. And that added cocoa butter fat just makes it more luxurious and a fattier mouthfeel, which enhances the experience. But now we're at a point here. We're ready to taste it. So go right ahead and taste it. So if you have some flavors that you're tasting, feel free to write them in the comments below. All right, so Chris says it tastes like it's fruity. Yeah. Kelly's saying it's tasting like coffee. Yeah. Interesting. Yep. Anybody else experiencing anything? Yep. Patricia says it's a little bit bitter. Yeah. So it's still like a pretty low percentage, being 72, but obviously it's the highest percentage we're going to be tasting today. So you'll see that the bitterness level will be decreasing. Very strong flavor. Okay. So I also, for me, I get like a nutty note. So they say on their bar, macadamia, avocado, and honey. So I never tasted avocado in as a flavor, but yeah, I mean, when you have like for macadamia, like we have a lot of people who have macadamia nuts a lot here in the States. Possibly not. There's a lot of macadamia nuts out in Hawaii. So that's what, Dave experienced these tasting profiles to be. So great. So I think we can move on to the next bar if anybody else has any other comments about that one. And between bars, we just, what is the big circle at the top of the chart for? Here? Are you talking about this right here? That's if you want to break off a piece and then put it on there. So you could essentially break off a piece, a big piece, and then you break it in half. Sometimes I use this if I'm just doing, I'm just putting out 4 different samples, and then I could just, instead of opening up and doing everything, I just lay it out beforehand. So it's up to you. It's very versatile. All right. So we're going to go into the next bar, which is the Stone Grinds Chocolate. They're based out of Scottsdale, Arizona, and this is the Ucayali region in Peru. So before we go into the next bar, normally we want to cleanse our palate. So if you have some water, go right ahead and have a sip. Basically, we want to clean out the fat. And so we also, as a palate cleanser, could, you'd use some table crackers if you have it. You didn't need it for today. It wasn't a requirement or anything, but what we normally do is, have a piece of cracker. Some experts use supi polenta. That's the best way to cleanse the palate. But we're not making polenta every day, so we may not have that in our cabinet. So crackers, they're more approachable at the supermarket or anything like that. So if you have a cracker, go right ahead. All right. So we go into the next bar, which we've seen a lot of the region of Peru. And they have a really beautiful packaging, as was mentioned before. And so here, okay. So they use a regular plastic wrapper and they just do a heat seal on it. So it may be a little bit tougher to break open and to preserve if you don't eat the entire bar in one sitting. This may pose a problem. So you have to just be mindful you don't rip it like I am doing it right now. All right. So we can compare the color of the bars now. You can see what do we think the shades are? Do you think this one is lighter or darker than the Hawaiian one? Dark, dark. Yep, darker. Yep. Exactly. All right, so the snap, pretty decent loud snap, right? And so you could see this is a much thicker bar compared to, well, actually they're both pretty thick. This one is thicker. So that also adds a layer of experience to the melting of the bar and how it's broken down in your mouth. So I literally have to break it into a smaller piece for this one. So let's go in and see what aromas are we getting. And if you don't get immediate aromas, what you may want to do is just move your finger around the chocolate and let it melt a little bit. That'll release some of the cocoa butter fat. And then you could then smell the aromas as they are now released. So there may be some dried fruit or some type of fruit associated with this. That's what I'm picking up outside of like a cocoa aroma, which it's most likely going to be there most of the time. Any aromas? All right, so I'm just getting that fruit note. So let's go right in for it. All right. So I'm liking these comments. So it's sweeter, yes, by a few percentage. It's milkier, it's really smooth, and it's a 3-ingredient chocolate. So this has beans, sugar, and added cocoa butter. And so that mouthfeel is much more silkier, smoother, more luxurious, and which is why it gives you that exact experience where it's like creamier and stuff like that. Those 2% really help. I mean, it also in conjunction with the added cocoa butter makes it, yeah. All right, so Patricia would totally buy this one. Yep. And this one I just noticed is the Gold 2019 ICCT Tasters Award. So it's just a special award. The 3 people who they run the International Chocolate Awards, they pick their own favorite bar out of the hundreds of submissions each year, and this one was the winner for it last year. So yeah. So we're getting, Christopher says, a lot less bitter for sure. Yep. What about the tasting notes? Does anybody pick up any unique flavor notes during that? Grace says it feels spicy. Yeah, interesting. Any other ones? Yeah, so the team that made this says that it's mocha, cedar, dried cherry, and chocolate. So it's quite pronounced. Like immediately, I experienced like a really tart flavor, like a burst of tart cherry when I immediately put it in my mouth. And then you could kind of take on like the journey, and like if you were taste it again later on, you'll be able to, like, now that you know and you've heard the notes, you may want to like seek out all of those flavors. You could do that or not. It's totally up to you. Don't go get hard on yourself if you don't get those flavors. It's totally fine. But yeah, their chocolate is quite interesting and complex when it comes to various flavors, and the burst of the flavor profile comes out. It's really intense. How do they make it taste fruity? They don't. They they don't put any fruit in there. It's they roast it a certain way, a specific temperature for a specific amount of time that brings out that fruit flavor. And then when they refine it, they also conch it. So conching is just an aerating of the chocolate. So it's a machine, and like the refiners that we saw, they're stone wheels running on a stone base, and there's a tension knob on it. So after a certain amount of time, they release that tension. So instead of the stones like causing friction, they're actually just aerating. They're just moving the chocolate around, and then that kind of rounds out the particles and also aerates it to bring out it like kills off all those off flavors more and brings out all of these nice flavors. So Voges had that bacon flavored bar. How to get bacon flavor? I've had that bar many, many, many years ago. You'd have to check the ingredients, because that, I believe, a lot of their bars. So Voges is a chocolatier. So they basically work with chocolate so they don't make the chocolate, I don't believe. I think they just purchase chocolate, they melt it down, and then they create these fantastic combinations of flavors. So that's where they may be adding in, bacon flavored oils, or I don't think they would put in bacon fat in there, because that just wouldn't, I don't think that would be attractive. And I know that they put in pieces of bacon in there for sure, but yeah, I'm not sure exactly what those ingredients are, but that definitely does. That's considered an inclusion bar, where the flavors, where there is actual additional ingredients to the chocolate rather than the 2 or 3 ingredients that we talk about. All right. Any other questions? You guys have given some great questions too, by the way. So the third bar we'll taste is the Madhu chocolate bar. And so Madhu, they're based in Austin, Texas, and their MO is really unique because they use one origin, and it's Tumaco, Colombia, and they do a whole series of inclusion bars. And so it's two partners. They're one of them is from India, and so they infuse Indian flavors into their chocolate. So they have a whole line of various bars that some have masala, some have other, cardamom, rose, and other fruits. So it's really nice. And so they use Tamako as a base. And so this is what I wanted to just highlight, the base of the chocolate that they use. So this here is a 2-ingredient chocolate as well. As you can see, you can see I have a nice light hitting me in the face here, but you can see the shine on it as well, which is really nice. So as far as comparing the colors, where do we stand with that? Do you think it's lighter or darker than the Stone Grinds one? Dark. Yep. It's a little bit darker, yeah. All right, so we're getting the package design vote from America on this one. Yep. And Patricia is already smelling something good. All right, let's do a little snap test first. It's a pretty decent snap. All right, so you may have to break it multiple times to get down to a sizable piece to taste. Any flavor aromas that anybody's getting? Oh, Carter, I didn't know that. Honey is called Madhu in the Indian Hindi language. Pretty cool. Now I know. See, I'm learning something from you guys. I like it. Thank you. All right. So not much flavor, not much aroma, or do we get any aromas? Yeah. All right, let's just go right in for it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely acidic. So I'm getting like I think it's like citrus notes, but yeah, there is so Sheila makes a good point there too. Dry compared to the last one. Yeah, so this is only a 2-ingredient chocolate. So there's no additional cocoa butter fat to make it luxurious and smooth and all that nice fun stuff. And it's a bit astringent. And so if anybody is experiencing right now, there's in the back, like by your jaw, it's starting to water up a little bit. That's astringency. And so as I'm talking, like my mouth is filling up with saliva and water, which is not the most attractive thing, but it's just your palate overcompensating all of those strong acidic notes. Yeah. So like I've gotten a lot of the citrus flavor. Did anybody else get any other flavor notes in that outside of the astringent acidic notes? Okay, earthiness. All right. Great. All right. So with Madhu, just one other thing. If you're intrigued by them, they do a really great chai masala bar as well. When I was curating the bars for you guys, I was trying to put together a wide variety of theme, like wide variety of origins, and I was also the two additional ones that were put in. I was going to put in the chai one, but I wanted to give you a really cool experiment with those two bars, which I'll talk to at the end as well. Yeah, it is. I should have I should have totally. Well, Siri's talking to me. Yeah, I should have put that one in then. All right. Well, I definitely have some extra. I could always send some over to you guys. So we'll move on to the last bar here. And this is Crow and Moss. They're based in Petoskey, Michigan. Oh, wait. Oh, that's funny. In case anyone is interested, my husband asked if it had liquor in it. He asked if it could, if he had the rest of the bar. So there's no alcohol in the bars. Though, if you really want to, if you really want something along those lines, a lot of makers are now aging their nibs in bourbon barrels, and it's the most fantastic thing ever. So they literally take the bourbon barrels after the bourbon is left, and after they use the bourbon, they bottle it up. They just put the nibs and age it for several months in these barrels, and so they then ensure that the moisture content is low, that there's no additional moisture. Then they go through the entire refining process, and there's some makers. One I did tasting on was a Dick Taylor bourbon bar. That's another fantastic bar. So so Patricia, maybe your husband may want to try one of those bars. There's no alcohol in there, but there's the taste of bourbon, if that's his thing. Totally a great gift. Yeah, it's bourbon. Yep. All right. So this fourth bar is the Crown Moss Dominican Republic bar, and Zorzal is the company. It's the organization that helps processes the fermentation and drying and shipment of beans. All right. So this, out of all the packaging, this one has a nice sealable closure, the zip. So you could literally take a piece of it, put it back in, seal it up, and you won't have any outside atmosphere getting into the chocolate, because chocolate does pick up outside flavor odors. So if you were to put your chocolate in the refrigerator and it be, with some really pronounced like onion and garlic flavored food, your chocolate may pick that up, and your chocolate may taste like onion and garlic, for example. That's just a tip on storage. You may want to put it into a bag and keep it in your fridge, or you could use a wine fridge as well. I have two wine fridges filled with chocolate bars at around like a 60 or so degree temperature. So it's cool and there's no outside other flavor aromas going on. It's just the chocolate. All right. So there's the chocolate bombs. Okay, Patricia, you'll have to explain that after we finish this bar, whatever that is. It sounds really interesting. So the question on the scoring of the bar does it impact the snap? So a lot of bars may not have these breaks on there. It's just the mold. Um, it helps portion control wise, but you could just, have a bigger portion of it. It's just the design of it. It looks pretty. There's no rhyme or reason. It's whatever the maker likes and would like to have. Certainly, sometimes as chocolate makers, they get themselves established. They're able to create their own custom molds with their own logos and branding on it. We didn't see a lot of that today. Maybe the Iron Sharks has their branding logo on it, but other companies who have been around 4 or 5 years, they've definitely created their molds. And it doesn't matter. You could break the size as big or small as you want. It's up to you. But since I'm holding this one, how is it on color? Was it the? I think it's a little bit lighter. I think than at least the Madu one. But the snap, it is a decent snap. Not much of a snap, right, Sheila? Yep. It's not as loud as the other ones for sure. So let's get into it. Mm. Mm. So this one is a 2-ingredient chocolate. So you have your beans from the Dominican Republic and organic cane sugar. So what are the flavors that you guys are getting from this? Okay, so I see citrusy. It seems too smooth to not contain cocoa butter. I mean, they could have conched it more, which would make round out the particles, so it would be a little bit more smoother. Yes, to the astringency, I'm getting that as well. So yeah, I'm getting like there is like a fruity astringency, there's an acidity with the fruit, and I believe it's like a red fruit. Bitter but still good. Yep, and it's funny because it's a 67%. Well, you can't really see the green that well here because of my green screen. There we go. It's there. But the yeah, awesome. So I seeing everybody's Patricia, you're saying you're sharing some of your favorites. All right, great. So with that being said, I think it's time. We've gone through all 4 bars. I think we're ready to make a judgment call. And with that, I'm going to put up a poll for you guys to take. So I'm going to launch it right now, and then choose. You could only choose one, so you don't have to make a hard decision here. All right. So there's 8. So we have 7 votes in. Is there one last person who wants to vote? Vote now or forever hold your peace. Closing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, we're closing the poll. And I'll share the results. And the winner is, drum roll, Stone Grinds. Yay. Awesome. Yep. Awesome. All right. So let me allude to this question here. One moment. I just need to move this screen over. Okay, here we go. So the question was Nola, Nola for Island Shark. Okay. Yep. So I'm sharing that. So I'll stop sharing that. Oops. All right. Yeah, Peruvian chocolate. I mean, it's a really fantastic bar. They do make amazing chocolate. They do pay attention a lot to their process, and it's literally just a couple, a 2-person company. They work some magic there in Arizona. So that's funny. I love these comments. It's great. All right. So what I wanted to do, so we did that. I wanted to just, this kind of concludes the entire experience. So I'm going to send over an email probably the next few minutes after we're done here. I want to thank you all for joining, and would love to get all of your feedback on this experience. What your favorite parts were, where your not so favorite parts. Share some feedback. This is how we increasingly improve our experiences. What was your favorite discovery? Biggest discovery? What was the biggest fun fact that you received? For me, I think my fun fact was Madhu means honey in Hindi. I did not know that, but now I know, and now it's all tied together. So I really appreciate. So yeah, let's talk about the packaging. So Sheila had mentioned she has a lot of favorites here. So I would love to hear. I don't have a poll for the packaging, but if you want to vote in the chat itself, which packaging would you, which bar would you purchase based solely on packaging? Go. All right. Wow. Interesting. Not what I expected. Wow. All right. So this is a mixed. I thought this was going to be a landslide. So we have 3 votes for Madhu, 2 votes for Stone Grinds, and 1, 2 for Cron Moss. and then whatever the lowest cacao percentage is with all 3 ingredients. So that would be, that was a 2, this one was a 2, this one was a 3. So that would probably mean stone grinds. 'Cause that was the least one. You look for the sticker with the award winner. I mean, it does, like it's a sure thing. As a consumer, it's a sure thing. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely chocolate makers who win awards that don't put stickers on their bars because they don't want to hide if they have a pretty design like this, right? So it's up to them. It's everybody's call. It's a whole unique experience, and I really hope that everybody had a really great experience today, this morning, this afternoon, wherever you are. And I will, yeah, I know some of you have to leave, so thank you so much. I will send out an email to Kelly shortly. And if you want to check out, my website is chocotastery.com. We have a bunch of stuff on our shop, chocotastery.shop. I do curated bundles of bars. And you can do it for gifts or for yourself. Other tastings. We have a cool Hawaiian experience with Island Sharks coming up at the end of like next weekend, which is really fun. And yeah, I mean, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with all of you. I hope you have a great holiday season and a great end to the year, and hoping that 2021 is a great year for you and the team. And yeah, and if you ever have chocolate questions, you could shoot me an email. My email is glenn@chocotastery.com, or you could just hit up support@chocotastery.com and I'll get back to you shortly. Yeah, thanks so much to Pat and Sheila for having the team and putting this all together. And I'm glad that you feel more educated about your guilty pleasure. Awesome. I love it. Awesome. So if anybody has any other questions or comments, whatever, you could unmute yourselves or whatever. And yeah, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Woohoo! Thank you, Glenn. That was fantastic.
Thank
Thank
you very
you.
much. Hope
Thank you so much, Glenn. That was amazing. We had so much fun.
Best team
I
event
did.
ever. Love this.
I know. This
Awesome.
is such a good event.
Yep. And so
We will recommend you to our colleagues. Deloitte has like hundreds of thousands of employees. So there are lots of these little groups around.
yeah,
Very fun. Thank you.
I would love to do this with more Deloitte team. I don't know if they'll be more fun as you guys, but I won't mention
We're
that.
gonna get the best.
I'll just say, they were a great team, but you guys have always been my favorites.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Sheila.
Bye.
Alrighty. And then Kelly, I'll send over an email. Okay, bye.